Hi, mine's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video, I'd like to discuss the notion that Conservative MPs may be being told that October the 5th next year is a potential election date. So strategically, what is the benefit in either Truss or her allies letting this be known? But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So the front page of the Daily Express has a headline about a snap election on October 5th, 2023. Now, this might seem like an odd thing to try to do, and indeed it will be. Right now, if you look at where the Tories are and plot the likely trajectory over the next few years, but certainly over the next year, it would seem madness to go to the polls in 13 months. Why? Well, first of all, Liz Truss is not going to win back the trust of the public. I see no real room for doubt here. The latest polling shows that even as we prepare for Boris Johnson to finally go, the public know that Boris Johnson's going in a few days. They're sort of certain it's likely to be Liz Truss. I mean, there could be insane if it turns out it's Rishi Sunak after all. But, you know, it seems clear that it's going to be Liz Truss. The public has certainly been told it's going to be Liz Truss. So they sort of know what's going on. And yet, Labour is still way ahead in the polls. This is almost certainly because the Tories are not addressing the cost of living crisis, but Labour are. Now, I still expect a bounce back in the polls when Truss finally announces something, because she will have to announce something. But they are delaying so long that it might not actually be all that big a bounce back. It is all very uncertain, but it's hard to see Truss getting the public on side in the short term unless she actually freezes the energy bills this autumn, because the public are massively in favour of that. And it's not clear that she's got the political room to do so. Although I've talked about plans that she could put in place, I don't know whether her MPs would go for it. But longer term, she is going to crash. You know, in the short term, she could actually make gains. In the long term, she can't sustain them. Early on in her campaign, the leadership campaign, she released a poster in error. It was meant to say that she would hit the ground running. What it actually said is that she would hit the ground. The error was more accurate. She is truly awful in interviews. She will be destroyed by Keir Starmer in PMQs. She will not have the authority to pull the Conservative Party together and govern, and she shows no serious interest in attempting to. She will just do and say whatever gets her to the end of the day, just as Boris Johnson did. We've seen that in the latest hustings. Whenever someone in the audience, and they're Tory party members, whenever someone in the audience has said, oh, what about this policy? She's got, good idea, yes. Oh, I think this is a disgrace. What do you think? I think it's a disgrace as well. She's just doing and saying whatever gets her the approval of those she needs the approval of. But like Boris Johnson, no substance behind it. She won't actually do anything. You know, expect Tory MPs. They let Boris Johnson get away with an awful lot because he was seen as an election winner, but Truss isn't. So she can't expect to get away with what he got away with. But she's going to try. You know, at best, some Tory MPs aren't sure if she can win an election, but others are certain she can. The second reason why it'd be madness next October, it's because we'll still be in a recession, almost certainly still in a recession. The Bank of England forecast has us in recession for the whole of 2023 into 2024. And their forecasts have recently ended up being too optimistic all the time. Not generally, every single one's been too optimistic. Right now, there is no forecast they can make that the Tory government cannot make worse when the real data rolls in. Truss has set herself on a path of high inflation, low growth, low investment and high taxes, despite what she says. Imagine the party of government triggering a general election over a year earlier than they have to, in the middle of a recession with a cost of living crisis, which will not have gone away, and going into a second winter of discontent. It would be utter folly. It's normal for governments to trigger a general election a year early if they're confident of winning, if things are going well. That's because if you leave it till the last minute, if you wait till the next year, something can go wrong, like a big economic crash or something. And then you snatch defeat from the jaws of victory. I can cite several governments, Labour and Tory, that have done this, in modern times. But although things can get worse in 2024 compared to 2023, things next year will still be bad enough to see the Conservatives lose big time. So why this report? Well, first of all, the article doesn't explain who said that October 5th, 2023 was a likely election date, or what their relation is with Liz Truss. They just say it's a well-connected source, which implies it's someone who is involved in Liz Truss strategy teams, but it's not saying it. And this well-connected source was talking absolute tosh in the quote as well. They said that the problem with waiting until the following year is you're waiting for something good to turn up, but it won't. And it's like, well, yeah, you are. But that would suggest they know they can't repair the damage they've done to the country. You know, whereas if you sort of think Liz Truss is actually going to do a good job in government, it's like, well, you'd expect improvements in 2023. We won't get them, but you'd expect that. Then you'd expect more improvements in 2024. So surely you would wait for the next year. Unless, of course, you think, now she's actually just going to make it worse. Also, I don't see anything good turning up in 2024. But the bottom line is, we're likely to have at least moved out of recession. Like, if you are the party of government, when do you want your election? When you're shrinking the economy or when you're growing it? I mean, what a bloody stupid thing to say. The article in the Express also made mention of the boundary changes. Now, the Tories put in place plans to fiddle the constituency boundaries in order to win seats more easily with fewer votes. They're not in place now, but they would be for next October. But they'd also be in place for the following year as well. So that's not a reason to have an election next October. It's just a reason not to have one now, you know, at the end of this year or early next year. It's also worth noting that the article made mention of Labour's difficulty to secure a large majority because it would struggle in Scotland, which is absolutely true. Expect this to be a line that they and similar Tory tabloids keep pushing, that it's, oh, you know, Labour can't actually form a majority government anyway, so you're better off having a majority Tory government. The problem is, though, that the electoral reality is that Labour don't need a majority to govern. It's a pain in the arse for them. They want a majority, of course they do. But much of the public aren't that bothered. They just want the Tories gone. For quite a lot of voters in the centre, it does them no harm at all to see a Labour minority government, because then they'd have to work with other parties. They don't mind that. And the latest polling suggests a massive loss of seats for the Tories. So they can't form a minority government anyway, because only the DUP would work with them. And their price would be very high this time. So realistically, it's not happening. And I don't know what the polls will look like for the rest of this year. Much of it depends on how Truss manages the various crises that her government has either brought into being or made worse. What I do know is that she won't sustain any gains into next year, because whatever she does will just be papering over the cracks. She won't solve any of the problems. She won't do anything for the long term. It'll be a short-term fix with a long-term cost. That's what the Tories always do. It's what Liz Truss will do. Next year, the public will see Liz Truss for what she is. And she doesn't have that charismatic glamour of Boris Johnson to get people to actually feel sorry for her when she screws them over. I mean, Boris Johnson, like he literally killed people. And people went, oh, poor lad. He tried his best. He tried his best. Liz Truss won't get that. Now, an election next year, at any time, would be madness for the Tories. So why are they trying to let it be known that we might have an election next October? Why is it on the front page of the Daily Express? Simple. It's to make Tory MPs behave themselves. The reason they got rid of Boris Johnson was because they feared he was going to cost them their seats. That's what they mostly care about, their seat on the gravy train. Liz Truss is going to face a lot of opposition from her own side. She is giving the strong impression that she is going to do many, many stupid things in her first year in power. By telling MPs that they've got to get ready for an election next October, it'll focus their minds on the campaign. Well, if they've only got a year's notice, pretty much, 13 months notice, literally, that's not very much. That means your campaign's pretty much starting. And a campaign does not succeed if it is divided. One of the reasons for the Tories' electoral success is they understand the importance of appearing united to the public, even when they're not. Truss does not have that much support in the parliamentary party. When the results are announced on Monday, unless she's won a stonking percentage of the party votes, unless she's won like 70% plus, she will begin her premiership on shaky ground. Starting to clock an early general election can easily be stopped, of course, when it's politically expedient. But if she starts the timer, that's a great way to suppress dissent within her own party. Because as bad as such an election would be for the Tories, their MPs know that it would be a damn sight worse if they are fighting like rats in a sack as it happens. But those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, please click the like button if you'd like to support the channel further, the join button for memberships, and until next time, I'll see you later.